This episode of Capes and Lunatics is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. Get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
This is Perich, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics Podcast.
Yeah! Hello and welcome back to another episode of Who Podcast the Watchmen, probably the longest title in podcasting history. I am Phil. Joining me as always, that man in black.
I don't know who you are.
Brother Knight. Yeah.
I'm a whole
and our extra special guest joining us this week is
Charlie, the Professor Essa. Live from New Jersey. Not Hoboken, though.
Not Hoboken. Oh.
I was about to say, Charlie.
I know. Hitting close to home.
Well, hey, what? We understand this. We are just outside of Target 1. If you're going to drop a giant squid on anyone, it's going to be us. Not like someone would actually blow up Pittsburgh to intimidate people.
New universe. Okay, new universe. All right. Before we jump into episode 5, Charlie, since we haven't talked to you, since we haven't been talking to you the last couple of weeks, what did you? What have you been thinking of the first 4 episodes?
Oh, I mean, I love the show. And here's what I'm going to say. This shocks me. I love that they're really true to the comic.
Mm-hmm.
That this is absolutely meant to be, the movie didn't happen, or that's another thing we're not even going to talk about. This is from the comics. This is days since Squidfall. We call this, that's how we calculate time now. I love the real political consequences of things. I like how there is basically this idea of the swinging of political pendulums, that you went into a certain kind of world under the extended Nixonian run, and now we're in that liberal switch. Mm-hmm. And how that doesn't make things right forever. It's just a brand new type of oppression, which I think is the real most telling aspect of this episode. Is that yes, we're under the tutelage of the Great Redford, but there's still a darkness underpinning all of it, because it's not about freedom or individuality. It is still about one group oppressing another, which is really beautiful in its own way, in the way that they're going to expand and deconstruct everything. And I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, this is by far the best thing DC has done.
Even better.
I'll say it.
Even better than Powerless.
Oh. I will go as far as to say this is better than Powerless. Better than Superman 3. There you go.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh.
Look, Powerless and Superman 3, they're good. Batman 66, it's good, but they're their own things. This is something that I think the whole family can enjoy. So,
really? What family?
Well, my family.
Oh, he lets his kids watch anything.
So your kids were enjoying the scene where Looking Glass is watching some more of the documentary about Hooded Justice and Captain Metropolis.
Oh, what last episode?
Well, they were asleep by then, but honestly, it's it's
his kids are
people having sex. I mean, it's
his kids are older than ours too, so
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm not judging how you guys raise your kids. My kids.
Mine's 6, and Tyler's are even younger. So I'm just.
No, and it's fair, and it's hey, in every kind of TV show, there's all kinds of relationships that are not necessarily the best relationship.
Oh, I don't care who's in it. I mean, he's not seeing any sex scene yet. I don't care who's in it.
Okay, that's fine too. Well, I mean. Here's what I'm going to say.
Creative control. Like, hey, look over here. Hey, what's that? Hey.
Well, here's what I'm gonna say. I don't know if my kids would even know that was a sex scene. I mean, they might. I mean, as you said, my kids are older. But like, if I was like a little kid, it's like, I mean, it just looks like one guy standing behind the other. You're not necessarily
pretty much clothed. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not into that idea of what sex is, let alone what gay sex would be. I mean, it might not even look like anything that weird, except for the guy says, "Don't look at me," And it's like, honestly, which is actually kind of a disappointment to me, because I think we always had this idea that Hooded Justice and Captain Metropolis had like an actual loving relationship, but now it's kind of suggesting that maybe it was kind of just as toxic as every other relationship in a
how much
story.
Have you read just Watchmen, or did you like read the before Watchmen books?
No, I really didn't read any of this. I read the original book and I saw the movie, and that's literally all I had to go on it. I've heard good things about Before Watchmen, and personally, I always felt that Alan Moore did feel that there was more story to tell before the whole kerfuffle. But so I never felt anything bad about anyone continuing a story in this universe. But yeah, I definitely read the original book. That's really all I read. So if they've done other stuff with these guys in the Before Watchmen, that's cool. Maybe I should read it. But I mean, as far as I know.
Yeah, in the prequel, they kind of hinted around they had a relationship, but like, Hooded Justice was like very angry. It wasn't completely loving, but yeah.
I mean, in the original book, it was pretty straightforward that they had a relationship.
Yeah.
Especially in the headcanon verse, when you go into that headcanon of it, and like the idea that, Hooded Justice and Captain Metropolis are actually at the table, which is where I think we get the idea that it was a loving relationship, because, was the Gaiman who did the art on this? And the original Watchmen, I thought it was him.
What?
But the original, the person who gets the credit on Watchmen,
Dave Gibbons, yeah.
Gibbons.
Yeah.
British people, they all look alike to me. But yeah, but he had said that Alan Moore never told him that the two men that you see in the foreground when Night Owl and Silk Spectre are having dinner before they go beat up the guys, that they were supposed to be anything significant. So he never thought to draw them as anything significant, but people wound up assuming that was supposed to be Captain Metropolis and Hooded Justice sort of in their retirement years. And it's honestly a lovely headcanon, and I like it. So so seeing them have that kind of more angry relationship is a little harder to deal with. But then again, these were people in the 20s or in the 30s and 40s dealing with having to hide who they were. I'm sure a lot of anger was about,
So, all right, let's get to this week's episode. Episode 5, what was it? Little Fear of Lightning.
Mm-hmm.
That opens up in Hoboken, and we see 85, like minutes before the squid hits. And
this is the first time they refer to it as 11-2. Like, it's kind of a 9/11 thing. They're like, 11-2. You were there for 11-2. Like, no one had ever used that phrase yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, it's 30 years after 11-2. So probably if you were affected by 11-2, just like if you were affected by 9/11, you're probably still going to use that terminology.
Well, right. But I mean, in the series, like, we're in the 4th episode, and no one has referred to the event yet as 11-2. Like, it's just,
No, I understand that. But that's... So, for example, and as an example, my kids and your kids probably aren't necessarily going to refer to 9/11 as 9/11. They'll probably even forget what 9/11 was. They'll know that there was a terrorist attack in 2001, but that particular code word might not have the impact that it does today, because this is stuff that happened before they were born. This is stuff that happened 30 years ago.
And we really haven't heard too many people talking about it specifically. And besides Looking Glass, none of the rest of the people we've seen really.
Yeah. Well, it's like, the day that'll live in infamy. Quick, what's the day that lives in infamy?
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the day, though?
Oh, December 7th, 1940.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we're nerds, so we know that. But there's a lot of people that have a hard time with that one.
Yeah, I know.
So, yeah.
12/7.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
But what I like about this episode, and this is like one thing, Charlie, like I've talked to Phil about with each episode, is feeling like, is this show worthy to be called Watchmen? Does it take what was this broad, massive story, and now we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and what's the significance to this story to be the follow-up? And I feel like with each episode, we're building towards more of a bigger story.
Well, basically, Tulsa is basically probably as good as anything else, because just from what we see later on, is this like Endgame? Is like New York and Manhattan like maybe like what it is in the real world? Because that what Wade was talking to those advertising guys about. It's like, hey, come back to New York.
One thing that I can't remember from the comic, and I need to go pull it off. In the comic, did it just attack New York, or did it attack other locations?
No. It was just New York. Yeah, it was just New York. That was the big change, and that's one of the many complaints about Snyder's version of it, was that he made it a global event, wasn't just New York.
Well, I think it should have been a global event. That's one thing I like about them, is because it made all of mankind stop and look at themselves. By just attacking New York, that was an extra dimensional attack, but it's still like,
maybe it was a numbers game. Maybe Veidt was just like, it'll kill a couple million in New York. That's enough.
Right. I'm not. We're not. We don't have to argue. Yeah.
Maybe you can only pull one squid out at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, those squids cost money. He's a billionaire, but let's not get crazy here.
Although, hey, he set it up so I guess every so often it will rain baby squids.
Yeah, and we can imagine
keep the peace.
We can imagine those baby squids are falling all over the world.
Oh yeah.
So it's like New York had the primary attack, but then everybody gets a squid ring.
Yeah, we saw first episode they were falling in Tulsa.
Exactly.
So, but
yeah,
I like this episode because it ties back into the story. It ties back into Watchmen. It feels connected and not a departure. So,
good.
What I think was important in this, and this is what I think we're going to be seeing more of that tying back going forward. I think in the first couple they wanted to establish essentially what people always say. It's like, all the superheroes live in New York, but all the world is outside of New York. So we're talking about a world that all the superhero stuff happened in New York. This big mess happened. But how does that inform the rest of the world? And this is the rest of the world with its own bags of hammers, its own issues, its own, to be fair, issues with hooded vigilante.
See, I would have liked to have seen more of if there has been the only vigilantes we really had that we've established in Tulsa was the cavalry.
The Ku Klux Klan were hooded vigilantes. That's kind of the point. That's the point of it, is that there were a lot of hooded vigilantes running around. They just aren't people that we would see today as positive people, although that's what we have with the 7th Cavalry. It's a reimagining of that same motif of the hooded, that vigilante just means someone who takes the law into their own hands. If they take the law into their own hands, it doesn't mean that they're actually taking that law into their own hands in a way that is positive for society.
Exactly. That's what because you said superheroes. Like there was no superheroes like in Tulsa that's yet to be defined. Like
No, you just have
Yeah.
nice.
what happened in New York. Yeah.
Actually, no. And I think the first issue wasn't the blue hood. Because there was a different hooded guy who shows up. He beats up the guys in the grocery store as part of the American Hero story.
No. Yeah, that's Hooded
I thought that
Justice.
was
That's part of
was
the
it-
Hooded
was it-
Justice episode.
well,
That's where they're
no,
telling us.
But that
Yeah,
didn't
that's
take place in New York. That didn't take place in New York. I thought that took place in Tulsa.
No,
I
it's
thought it
part
was
of the
Tulsa
TV
1938.
series.
No, I understand
part
that, but I thought that because actually I thought that first off I thought that was a different a hooded figure because he had a blue hood rather than the traditional purple hood of Hooded Justice.
I'm looking it up.
He was purple.
In the not this episode, I think it was the very first episode.
No, yeah, in the first episode, because that's been the only episode of that TV series they've talked about is the Hooded Justice episode, or the Hooded Justice season.
Yeah,
they keep bringing.
In this episode, you have one of the people speaking because he actually called him like the Blue Hood or something like that because he makes the point that one of the Panda guy actually made the point that his fan theory is that is actually Dr. Manhattan. And he
because he said because it was in the 40s. Like, and what's his face was like he wasn't around in the 40s. He's like he could time travel. He could not time travel.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting question about Dr. Manhattan. Could he time travel? And
yes,
well, yeah, theoretically. Well, that's an interesting question about Dr. Manhattan. Does he time travel, or is he simply aware of all of his points in time?
Hey, I know we can slow down time. I mean, Doomsday Clock number 12 was supposed to be out like a year ago.
Yeah, well, you know what I will say about Dr. Manhattan, which I think is the biggest question in this, which is Dr. Manhattan Ozymandias' jailer? And if not, who is?
So was that the moon Vite was on?
No.
Yeah.
No. Well, is it the moon?
I know when he looked up, that didn't look like Earth to me. It looked like reddish. So I was like, is he like on a moon of Mars or something?
Yeah, wherever he was.
Did the planet look red?
It didn't look like the moon to me. And also what I will say is that the ground he walked on, this is just a little bit of nerdery from my perspective, is it didn't look like moon dirt because it wasn't granulated. In the same way that when the astronauts walked on the moon, they left footprints.
Yeah.
That the ground was very solid, which actually made me think, wow, that almost looks like it's almost like a set.
Yeah. And like I said, the planet he looked up at, I thought it looked reddish. So if that is Mars, I mean, wouldn't that make sense? Because Manhattan's on Mars.
Does Mars have a moon though? I don't think Mars has a moon. Maybe it's on a moon of Saturn or Jupiter.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, there's lots of moons out there.
Again, maybe, or did Manhattan make one?
Oh, he could be on Titan. Well, it's an interesting question because as we see in this episode, there is clearly a conspiracy going on between.
It was Hooded Justice in Queens, New York.
Oh, it was Queens, New York. Okay. So my correction. Thank you, Tyler.
Oh no, you're cool. It's just because there is a lot they're throwing at us, but this episode. So I think in a way that maybe Ozzy Vite is trapped by Manhattan because I think Manhattan would have the ability to keep him there, but at the same time, I thought about this. There's something up with the daughter of Lady True. And if we think about, in this episode also introduced the idea of cloning technology. Mm-hmm. And that would also explain why you have all the Mr. Phillips and Miss Crookshanks.
Oh, yeah.
And we know that Lady True bought Vite's company. So we don't know any more than that.
Yeah, the daughter might be alone. I thought we said that. And like I said, hey, I'm going to make another prediction because my first one was right. Like I said last episode, I think Lady True might be Adrian Vite's daughter. Because last episode, Charlie, she said something about, everything she had or something like came from the seed of his greatness. I was like,
yeah, I mean, I can.
I mean, it might not be literal, but I'm just.
I mean, I guess what I would say is that is one thing that's a little separate from the canon.
Well, like we were saying last episode, remember in the original Watchmen when they showed Dr. Manhattan and the comedian in Vietnam during the war? What if Ozymandias was there too?
Oh yeah, well no, and certainly that is a possibility. I mean, you really want to go crazy, maybe not for nothing. If you want to deal with alternate timelines of things, maybe that is actually the comedian's daughter. Although no, she wouldn't. She'd be too old for that. So, or she wouldn't be for that. But
that's what I was thinking too. But he killed the mother, so I just didn't know how.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's interesting.
Well, I mean, if you wanted to, it's easy to write because he shoots the mother, and then he gives the speech to Manhattan and walks out. And all you have to think is that Manhattan did something to save the baby. It's easy to retcon if you wanted to make it work. I like this episode because I like that it shifted away from Angela and started to explore more of Looking Glass, who had been set up as a side character who let's fill out the world of the people that were around. Let's learn about everyone else who's involved, because I thought back that how much more powerful would this episode have been had we have never seen Looking Glass's face yet. Like if we had, just had the scenes like earlier where he pulls up the mask just enough to eat or whatever. And then in this episode, he actually reveals his face to us as the audience, because we spend so much time with him without the mask. Because you could have easily done this opening scene without dropping his name Wade in New Jersey, and then transition like they did to the man, sitting there doing the marketing, and then all of a sudden like he drives off, and then you find out that's Looking Glass.
Although
I don't know.
Maybe they were playing it. I thought, I didn't think twice about that mask. I'm like, oh, he just got a mask until this episode. And I was like, oh, he's protecting himself against the alien psychic attack. Okay.
Yeah. Well, but what I found most interesting about this entire concept is not just that he's protecting himself from alien psychic attacks, but the fact that he himself is psychic. Because this is actually the most interesting sort of reversal in Alan Moore's statements about things. One is that there are no superpowers in the Watchmen universe.
Is he psychic?
Well, if you remember from the original series, the existence of psychic powers is a established concept.
Yeah.
And arguably, magic is hey, it's Alan Moore, so pretty much guaranteed that Aleister Crowley is a real powerful mage in this universe. So magic and psychic powers are real things. They just don't dress up as superheroes. Yeah, but
have they definitively said that Looking Glass is psychic? I thought he was just reading people.
What Charlie's going with. Yeah. You could say that he has, if you wanted to go, you could say he has an abnormally developed sense of intuitiveness, like that could be almost psychic. Like maybe he doesn't realize it, but
dilation. I mean,
he's noticing this, but because he survived that attack, but he was affected somehow with that psychic blast, that it could cause like his development or something. Because I mean, this is all theoretical stuff and fiction, but that he has the ability to register and read people and sense things that
could have made
it. That's why he can tell.
Yeah.
Well, there's an interesting part about the scene of everyone dying in Hoboken is that you notice that the other people that are still walking around at the end of that are the other guys from his group.
Oh.
That the other Jehovah's Witnesses actually, for whatever reason, were able to survive this attack. Now, why that is, we haven't gotten into, but one could imagine that the idea of being a person ensconced in devout prayer might give you some kind of protection against it, in the sense that you're performing ritualistic mental exercises that are, for nothing else, meant to protect you from demons, So when the squid monster shows up, these Jehovah's Witnesses were uniquely prepared to defend against it. And of course, how that's going to inform their psychological approach to the universe thereafter certainly gets explored here. And we look at Looking Glass becomes a guy who is obsessed to the point of crippling him emotionally with the idea of extra-dimensional beings attacking. Even though he survived the attack, and even though one could argue the entire concept of religion hinges on the idea of extra-dimensional beings possibly attacking you. So it's an interesting idea, and that just it's sort of like this idea, oh, look, the demon has arrived, but the world didn't end. How do I process this within my own cosmological view of the universe that I have literally been preparing for my entire life?
That's the shock that he gets when he's revealed the truth.
Oh, again, right. The senator is working with this 7th Cavalry. I was right.
Okay, so help me piece this together.
Mm-hmm.
He said he came down to control this, and Judd was to control this department, and that basically they were trying to
working both sides. Yeah.
And my thought was, when did Judd or whatever, did the 7th Cavalry turn, or did Judd ascend after the White Knight? Was Judd part of the White Knight?
We still don't know who killed Judd, because remember, Angela's grandfather said he killed Judd.
Yes.
Right. And I'm just kind of interested because, the Cavalry, did the Cavalry start, when did they officially start? Because we know what happened at the White Knight. Mm-hmm. And that's when Judd took over, or was he always?
Judd was already there. I think it was at least the captain at that point. So here's essentially my breakdown of what was said in this. So there is the 7th Cavalry, and there is the police force, and they are sort of two opposing forces in Détente, not dissimilar from the idea of the U.S. and the Soviet Union at the Cold War. And the idea is that, Judd essentially handled the cops, made sure they didn't push too hard on the 7th Cavalry, because if they pushed too hard, the pushback would have blown everything up. Likewise, the senator was really in the 7th Cavalry to make sure they didn't push too hard on the cops and then have it blow up. Essentially, you get this idea that we're having this sort of, as they say, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So if you want to give a big overarching prediction for this season, you have this idea of Lady True seeing that the ongoing choices made by Ozymandias to maintain the peace are starting to lose their effect. And maybe now we need a new threat to rise to affect that.
Which makes, that's what Dr. Manhattan told him at the end of Watchmen. Exactly. That nothing lasts. This is just, it's not going to maintain itself. And we're 30 years removed. And by this time, we've seen it in our own lives how things change as quickly as it does.
The whole thing with the cavalry, I think they've been there the whole time, because didn't Wade even say Judd's father was, I don't know if he was cavalry, but he was at least he was Klan. Right. I think just at some point the Klan was just like, oh, hey, let's put these fancy masks on.
See, I think it'd be interesting if they explore the idea that the cavalry spawned from the Klan, but they were even more radical people, because the whole point of the Klan is supposed to be, or the cavalry is, they're more dedicated to the words that Rorschach had published in his journal, and we haven't got back to that journal of what he said. So I think that would be more interesting to explore instead of just saying they're like the Klan with new masks.
So I think, are they like racist and like combination of like racist and conspiracy theorists? Because I'm sure the government's probably trying.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's just a hoax.
You know what it is that they're more John Birch society. So here's essentially how you can look at them. You have groups like the John Birch Society, which are not canonically racist, although they are definitely racialist. So you have this idea that there are these groups that have a very negative view of people that they see as other, who are dangerous for society. But at their core, they're not going to say, "Oh, it's because I'm racist." They're going to say, "Oh, it's because I've seen." It's basically the idea of I'm not racist. I'm not racist, but so the the idea of the objectivist Rorschach view of the world. It's like I'm not racist, but a lot of people who aren't like me are causing problems.
What was
that was what Rorschach. I mean, Rorschach was not a good person.
No,
that's kind of the thing. If you go back and read the book, like he really was a hater.
Yeah, but he hated all humanity equally.
Yeah, true.
That's the thing. But if you're going to have an organization, you can't hate all humanity equally because all of your members are made up of humanity. So you need other lines to draw. So, as an example, you may find a black person amongst the seventh cap. You might find that. I'm not going to say that it's going to be there, but it theoretically could exist there because its core belief system isn't in and of itself racist so much as
That's what we need. That's what we need is showing the cavalry as more than something instead of just being the Ku Klux Klan with new masks.
Well, but the short answer of that, I think, is that the Ku Klux Klan isn't just about racism. It was always about economic oppression of another to aggrandize yourself. It's always about fascistic control.
Right. But that's not what you think of when someone says the Klan.
No, it's not. But that's because people, because it's an easy because. The long and short of it is they were racist, and I'm sure many of the 7th Cavalry are very, very much racist. In fact, clearly the senator makes the point. It's like, look, these white supremacists, I can send these white supremacist guys over to kill your friend and her family.
Yeah.
Or you can take her off the board. Oh, by the way, my favorite part about this entire episode was when the senator tells Looking Glass, "I'm putting it in your hands," which of course is a callback to the last scene of The Watchmen when the guy has Rorschach's journal and the editor says, "I'm putting it in your hands." Again, about how you have a choice. You have a choice to make.
Oh, yeah.
And Looking Glass does make that choice. And I think it's very interesting, the choice he makes and the consequences of it, which are literally that the 7th Cavalry still shows up at his house. Now, we're going to see probably not next episode, but the episode after it. My hope is he's going to totally, night owl them and say, "Dude, I'm a freaking superhero. I wear a mask," and beats them all up before they kill him because he's been prepping for someone coming for him for a very long time.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm going to fight his way out, and then.
But the one thing is, his spirit is broken. His core belief of an event that he. But that was the whole point. Was he believed something? He had something happen to him, and they got him by proving that this was wrong, and it shattered him. And part of that is shown in the scene where he goes to grab his hat. and he just leaves his hat.
Or, I
And
mean, he could be casting off his fear. He's probably been living in constant fear since 1985. Now he's like, he feels stupid, but he's like, hey, I don't have to live in fear anymore.
And do you know how I will say he's not fully broken? Because he initially throws out the box from EDS.
Yes.
And then he goes back and he grabs it. Because
because that shit's expensive.
Well,
he wants to return that thing.
Wow.
He paid for the overnight shipping and everything. Like, he wants to get his money back. But no, I mean, but think about it. He has this experience, and it causes him to betray Angela, in the sense that they're working together against the FBI.
Well, but
he has her come clean.
Angela, is he betraying Angela, or is he saving Angela?
Yeah, is he saving her?
He does by he knows the microphone's there. He has her confess into the microphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
so instead of coming to him,
was there another way to take her off the board? That's the thing.
Yeah, would she stop if he didn't get arrested? Yeah.
Exactly. He's like thinking, how can I solve this problem? And here's the thing, as was presented earlier, that under the Redford regime, there are lots of rules for cops, even though they wear the masks. And the fact of the matter is, he knows that she's better off with the FBI than with, the 7th Cavalry.
Yeah, if he doesn't get arrested, the cavalry, he's thinking, hey, she'll be in a cage, but at least she'll be alive. The cavalry will kill her.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and her family.
Yeah, but I mean, what's going to happen?
But she's going to be tripping in that cell, man. Well,
that was her choice.
That bottle of nostalgia pills.
Yeah, well,
so
and that is
random memories of her grandfather in pill form, and then we have. Let's look at some of the technology, like in this episode that's presented to us, is like the can opener. Like, that was just kind of neat the way it just sat there and did its own thing to open.
Mm-hmm.
Just little things like that. And then we get the cloning of your pets or even people. And we also get to watch them destroy and, incinerate a dog.
Oh, yes. Well, because if you're cloning, first off, dogs are basically plastic forks to start with, especially if you go to any kind of puppy mill. And the people that are going to get your pet cloned, you're basically going to a high-tech puppy mill. So, yeah. And so it's like, yep, we created this dog. It's not quite right. Throw it into the incinerator, which is literally what happens at puppy mills. Like, its body isn't right. Throw it in the incinerator.
I know. I was like, really?
Yes. Yeah, well, puppy mills are like that, man. You buy a purebred dog, that's where it comes from.
Oh, yeah.
That's why you should always get a mutt from your local pound.
Yes.
I
agree.
Just going to say that. Yeah. Puppy mills are very scary places, but it's a dog, so no one worries as much about it. They make the death painless, arguably.
I was going to say, I don't get pets, but I know my parents get from the shelter, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
My concentration's broken. Danielle just walked in from work. She looked at the screen and did a double take when she saw Tyler.
I saw him smiling. I'm like, Danielle must be walking around.
Yes. Right
but
now, everyone's frozen on my screen, so I don't know what you guys are all doing.
I like this episode because I liked that it got into more characters. I liked that it went back to the source material.
But what about what did Looking Glass see? The tape fight made for Redford, what was it, 8 years before, 8 years before he took office or something?
Yep.
Yeah, it was. Well, this is actually what I thought was most interesting. And again, goes into this idea that they're playing with the fact that the Constitution in this world is not our Constitution.
Oh,
because it's January 1st, 1993, which is not when you take office. He would have taken office January 20th, 1993.
Yes. Yeah.
So the idea that suddenly you're taking office New Year's Day is an odd. I mean, obviously the date when you take office was moved, but to make it New Year's Day is an odd quirk.
I'm trying to remember. Did he actually say you're taking office today?
Yeah,
I was going to say by January 1st he would know he's going to be president, but that.
No, because he was saying because he wouldn't be shown it until he was president.
Yeah.
That was the idea, and so it was interesting that he said it's January, because he's not saying it's January 1st, 1993 from his perspective.
Yeah.
From his perspective, this is actually before the attack because you see the squid behind him.
I mean,
if you watch, you see the squid still in the tank behind him.
Yeah.
So this is something he before he even does the attack. So this is before everyone shows up in Antarctica.
Yeah.
He's like, this is what he was doing beforehand. And it's a brilliant idea that he is setting this up. Now he makes this point in his statement to President Redford that we're going to have a partnership to make this work. And this is where I get this question about who is Ozymandias' jailer. Because it is easy to say, oh, it must be Dr. Manhattan. But I actually think it's Redford. I actually think that that this is something set up by the government. And again, going back to my first theory on this, that this is a jail Ozymandias designed for himself. Because he says, when I first got here, I felt it was a paradise. Now I realize it's just another prison, and now I want to escape.
Yeah.
But it's a prison that he designed so he could not escape it.
The only thing that still leads me to think it's Manhattan though is remember when what is that, the gameskeeper or the grounds or the guy in charge of his jail was like, after he took his little leap into the sky and came, got pulled back, he was like, well, Veidt tells him, he's like, you people are stupid, your God has left you or whatever, and the guy's like, yeah, he's right, our God has left us, no mercy then.
But that assumes Manhattan is the God and not Veidt, because Veidt is the one who clearly created all of the clones.
Yeah.
There's all Veidt technology, and
he says, I am not your master. I'm your master. I'm not your maker.
Mm-hmm. No,
unless whoever jailed him just gave him the means to like clone people, so he's not like in solitary. But
well, I get the feeling the idea is because I think this is because you notice that all of his tech has this real steampunk vibe.
Yeah.
So I think there's an aspect of it that is also that he doesn't have adequate tech to build himself a way out. He has to, from what he can scrounge together, put together the stuff that he has. So he doesn't have everything that he needs to have to get out, but he has enough that he can jerry rig it,
Yeah.
So I think that sort of, and that again goes to this idea that I think this is a prison he made for himself. I think he made a prison that was supposed to be a pleasant place for him to stay. He'd done all his manipulations to get Redford in office, whatever those were. And then, now he's here. Now, maybe because Manhattan isn't the villain in this piece, maybe he still has a relationship with Manhattan. And clearly, the rest of the world has a relationship with Manhattan, possibly even President Redford. And so you find yourself in this situation where it's entirely possible for Redford and Manhattan and Ozymandias all agreed you need to be locked up. You can't be manipulating people's lives like this. And so Ozymandias said, well, if you want to keep me locked up, because as I've said, he can probably escape from any prison you put him in. He's like, well, it has to be on another planet. It has to be this. It has to be that and this and the other. And so they set that up. But even then, he's still great at being a prisoner. And now he's trying to escape, except, of course, that he designed this prison for him to not be able to escape. Because you'll notice that the game warden is also one of the clones, although this one has a mustache. Like so much, or Cesar Romero, however you want to look at it.
I don't know. I guess the level of tech is high in this world, but I don't know. It just seems to me like Manhattan's the only one who could like basically create this environment on some moon.
Yeah.
Well, except that we see that 30 years ago, as makes a point that the dimensional doorway that they were using was an established technology that was being used in Manhattan at that time. So what Vite created was well established as technology.
You could be right, but I don't see him as the type to lock him, create his own prison. I don't,
If he felt that was the only way for Redford. So, for example, Redford could have said, well, then I resign, and screwed up his entire plan. You want me to be the president, you have to stop manipulating things. You have to be put away, because otherwise I will just walk out of this room right now, because we will not allow ourselves to be controlled in this way. And this, of course, goes into this central idea, Manhattan being the one who sees all the possibilities. But even in Watchmen, he was saying, there's a point that I cannot see past, and I don't know why that is. And it's a little disturbing to me. But the idea that at a certain point, human choices, especially when humans have knowledge of the future, suddenly you may want to make a different choice. And once you start making different choices, everything changes, which is why we aren't in a utopia yet, because we're still in a world with difficulties and human choices and human problems. You can eliminate these big problems like, the U.S. and the nuclear war, the U.S. and the Russia might go to nuclear war, but truth be told, in the real world, we never went to nuclear war. So the argument that, we avoided nuclear war, well, what's to say we actually ever went to nuclear war? You were worried about it, and you dropped a squid on a bunch of people, killed a bunch of people, but that's no reason to assume we would have gone to nuclear war. We didn't go to nuclear war.
Point.
Well, exactly.
The assumption of keeping the peace, and for him to stop people from what they were doing to change. Because you have that scene in the book where the comedian's talking and sets the map on fire, and basically and he talks about controlling people, and that's what plants the seed in his mind for his plan.
Well, exactly. But of course, you can't control people. That's the point there. You can't control people any more than you can control cats. Once you have a cat in the experiment, anything could happen. Because
yes. Speaking of cat, why doesn't he have his cat?
Oh, well, maybe he wasn't allowed to take it.
Exactly. But I just the ego on him, I know it's right for the world, even if I got to kill 3 million people to save the world. With his ego, you could be right, but I don't see him as the one to go in the imprisonment voluntarily.
Well, but if it's a prison that he designed to be his own paradise, then it's not so bad. If it said, okay, I'm going to make a prison that I don't want to escape, because for what it's worth, that's the only way you could make a prison that he couldn't escape is when he wouldn't want to escape.
Yeah.
And there you go.
So, anything else about this episode that what didn't we hit?
I think we got everything that's in it.
My favorite phrase of this series so far: "Squid pro quo."
Squid pro quo. Yeah, it was.
I really like that the police were focusing their searching on finding that church, and the fact the cavalry basically
just created one in that mall.
Yeah,
apartments.
Yes, they're having this huge department store, and they basically have just have created their own. Just whatever they want it to be. Like it's a compound.
Basketballs just keep dropping out of portals, and Wade just keeps going.
Well, yeah, because that's scary.
Well, yeah. Well, especially with him, because he keeps expecting a squid attack.
Yes, exactly. And for what it's worth, I'm sure if he is psychically sensitive, the opening of those portals are giving him headaches.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't have his hat on. So yeah, it's all. This series I think it builds on the lore. It gets better each time I watch each episode I watch. Because again, like I said, I feel it is. If you actually came to Watchmen 30 years later, what did that world become? Because nothing. Because as Dr. Manhattan says, nothing lasts. Whatever was created, that's for this moment. But in 20 years, who knows what's going to be there? And that's where we're at now.
And of course, it's on HBO. So of course, we got that shot in the New York video of Michael Imperioli, saying, "You know how we like our squid now, with lemon and a bit of marinara."
Yeah, well, it's nice to see Michael Imperioli getting work.
Oh yeah.
It's fun. Although, interestingly enough, that actually suggests that New York is actually still a media center. So I don't know about that, but it's interesting how that all plays out. You know?
Was that there?
I'm more interested in Spielberg's last film about the White Horse.
Oh yeah, the White Horse that was playing in the band that was playing Madison Square Garden at that time. A little, and maybe we'll see that before the end of it. At least that scene. Although now I wonder if the radiologist was maybe making that up. Although again, since Rorschach, I'll keep on wanting to call him Rorschach. Yeah.
he never made Schindler's List. Spielberg made The White Horse instead of Schindler's List.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. But
they talk about it's the same motif of the girl in the red shirt and the black and white. It's just because of this event. He never made Schindler's List.
But one of the things I would like to say about this episode is I really see how, although he's not 7th Cavalry, Looking Glass is very much meant to be our stand-in for Rorschach. He does see the world in much the same way that Rorschach maybe did, although perhaps in a different view of him. But again, we see him doing all the same visual cues. He's got a mask. So Rorschach's mask is a mask that is essentially, quote unquote, a Rorschach test, which means you see what you want to see. Looking Glass mask is just reflective, which means you just see what you are. And they're eating the cold beans out of a can, But what I think it's an interesting question. If you look at the actual original creations of the question and Mr. A from Ditko, Mr. A is the very violent objectivist, and the question was meant to be the equally objectivist, but the more essentially Comics Code friendly version of this objectivist superhero. So, and I like to think of that as the dichotomy between Rorschach and Looking Glass. So I'm really hoping we see more. I'm really hoping Looking Glass doesn't just die when they come into his. I'm really hoping that there's going to be like a standard superhero reunion between Sister Night and Looking Glass, where they realize they've got to go deal with this larger conspiracy, much like Watchmen, and then at the end of it have to realize that again with Silk Spectre just coming to you know what, we can unmask the conspiracies all we want. It's not going to make a difference, and at the end, the world is safer because of what we had to deal with. That's my prediction. Mark my words.
Mark my words.
That's right. All right. So, Tyler, anything else?
I think we got it all.
Yeah, I think so. All right. So, everyone, send in your thoughts. What do you think's going down? Send in your raving reviews for Charlie Esser. Email us, capesandlunatics@gmail.com. Call the voicemail, 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And remember, you can check out all of our social media links, the links to the merch, the YouTube, everything at Linktree, linktr.ee/capesandlunatics. And remember to support our sponsors, including Pod Life the book. There's a lot of podcasters / writers in here, including myself. Charlie Esser mentioned in at least 2 chapters in this book.
Of course.
That's right, because he is a important figure in media. Who
knew?
Who knew? All right, so Tyler, where can people find you and the Krypton Report?
I say normally I'm not wearing this, mask of concealing who I am. So I should have been like this, I guess. But you can find me on Krypton Report. I need a podcast. I can't have people know my identity. And find us on Twitter, Facebook, and here on Southgate.
All right. And I always save you for last. Charlie Esser, where can people find you?
Well, you can always write to me that old-fashioned email way, the way we did back in 1985 at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet things, but not the Watchmen this week because I forgot. At Charlie Esser. That's CHARLIE. Yeah. ESSER. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing. Moz Mansour. All right. So. Button. All right. So join us again next week, everyone. Episode 6. Already episodes. Wait. Yeah, episode 6. Or wait. Yeah, episode 6. I'm just afraid we're not going to even see Looking Glass next episode. Are we going to be like dealing with like Angela's,
Yeah. It's going to be the opposite.
That's what it looked like.
It's going to be her drug trip. It's a bottle filler episode.
Yeah, that's what it looked like from the previews. Yeah. Man, we'll get some answers on that front. What?
I'm down with that though.
Oh yeah.
You gotta save something for later.
Oh yeah. I want the answers on that front, but I want to see what happens in the Looking Glass too.
I know, and that's why you gotta wait and pay for more HBO.
But
That's how they get you.
This is one show that I would like to binge compared to just replay.
I'll come back next time. TikTok.